This episode of Risky Business contains footage from a mature video game. Viewer discretion is advised. Celebrity voices are impersonated. Everyone knows there's only one undisputed champion when it comes to wrestling games on the PlayStation 2. Rumble Roses. This game has everything. Boobs, butts, naughty nurses, naked ninjas, a dominatrix, mud wrestling, panties.
This is such good shit.
Need I go on?
Explain yourself.
Okay. Well, before you write this off as a massive fan service game, I want to tell you that sophomoric titillation is only a very small piece of what makes Rumble Roses an interesting entry in video game history. Alright, do me a favor, after you watch this, please check out my other videos because I'm really not sure if I can monetize this one. It's going to be a little racy. Rumble Roses was developed by Ukes, who had been rather faithfully developing WWE games during this era, and would continue to do so up until WWE 2K19. That's right, this game was made by competent developers who knew their way around a video game, and it shows. In fact, you may also know Ukes from Power Move Pro Wrestling, and all the New Japan Pro Wrestling games that were released from 1995 onward. Mostly Japan-only titles. Power Move was actually an Americanized New Japan game where they just took out all the licensed characters and replaced them with reasonable facsimiles. I think it's safe to say that these developers know a thing or two about how to make a wrestling game. Now, at the time Rumble Roses was released, I wasn't really following WWE or any other pro wrestling promotions. So I just wanted to play a wrestling game that wasn't affiliated with any of the brands that were out there. So Rumble Roses was really the only one that I could find that wasn't based on any existing promotion. And it became a guilty pleasure pretty quickly because I like to play it, but I wouldn't want anyone to know I was playing it. It got a pretty lukewarm reception, but I think in today's video I'm going to make a simple point for you, and that point is Rumble Roses is a good wrestling game.
Surely you can't be serious.
Alright, let's address the elephant in the room here. Gratuitous titillation, yes. This game is comically heavy on the polygonal sex appeal. Several of the characters are basically just girls in slutty Halloween costumes. Their ring gear would make Tori Wilson blush. They sometimes respond to wrestling moves by writhing and moaning, and one of the most rewarding ways to defeat opponents is by humiliating them. It even got an M rating from the ESRB. And what better arbiter of content is there than the group that gave Night Trap and Mortal Kombat the same rating? Moreover, the game's story, setting, and overall aesthetic are all absolutely screaming anime style. It definitely caters to the anime fan more than the wrestling fan, which probably explains its rather lukewarm reception. It exists in a sort of Schrodinger's box where it is simultaneously both a wrestling game and weeb erotica. In fact, Rumble Roses sits smack dab in a very small sliver of a Venn diagram where anime fans and wrestling fans overlap. It leans quite a bit more into the realm of sci-fi and fantasy than it does pro wrestling. But me, circa 2004, this was exactly my wheelhouse. Right in a place between a somewhat mainstream entertainment and Japanese stuff. The story revolves around a wrestling tournament held by a mad scientist who is trying to make DNA samples from the wrestlers in order to create superhuman soldiers. This is a midnight movie quality plot if I've ever heard one. In fact, I'm pretty sure I've seen the film adaptation on an episode of USA Up All Night.
On USA Up All Night.
The story mode is the cornerstone of the game, with each of the 11 wrestlers having a unique story to tell. The matches are determined by which character you're playing, and cutscenes in between fill in all the exposition of the storyline. It's kind of cool when you see the different stories intersect. Finishing story mode and defeating the SNK fighting game level broken end boss unlocks your character's alter ego, but only for story mode. To unlock alter egos for the other game modes, you have to use the VOW system. The VOW system allows the player to select up to 3 challenges that will move their alignment toward either heel or face. For those unfamiliar, a heel in wrestling is a bad guy, and a face or babyface is a good guy. The more difficult the challenge, the more it moves the meter. Yeah, that's right. The player's action in-game can turn a wrestler face or heel. Could you imagine if there was a system like that in the WWE games today? Universe mode would be awesome. It's pretty cool. You become more of a heel by doing heel stuff, like hitting your opponent with a weapon or taunting them. And you become more of a babyface by doing babyface stuff, like fighting fair. The movesets are totally different. Heel characters have a lot more humiliating moves and more dirty moves, and faces have an arsenal of more orthodox and high-flying, crowd-pleasing maneuvers. And you can even see when you change one character's alignment how different their moveset can become. The main downside to this is that the wrestler can only be one or the other. So once you turn a heel face or a face heel, you have to play them that way, unless you want to turn them back again. Now, sadly, you're not going to find any tag, ladder, steel cage matches, anything like that. There's no battle royal. It's just 2 match types. Either a regular one-on-one match or the Mad Mud match, which is a mud wrestling match on the beach. Yeah, like I said, that's the kind of game this is. So these matches don't have any kind of disqualifications, there's no rope breaks, there's no countouts, so it's kind of like a no-holds-barred match. You can even lean over the corner of the barricade and grab a weapon, but I can't figure out how to get the weapon back into the ring. The AI has done it a couple times on me though. Now you can challenge for the World Championship, which by default is held by Evil Rose, but in order to do so, you must turn your character 100% heel or 100% face. So obviously, a pseudo-erotic anime pro wrestling game about a mad scientist is a pretty bizarre So why did this game even get made in the first place? According to an interview that I found with producer Akari Uchida, it began with the goal of making the best possible female character models. And after pitching a few ideas, they landed on wrestling as the best way to showcase their impressive character models. According to an article published in IGN, they used over 10,000 polygons on each character, which was a record for PS2 at the time. And if you look at the character models, they are really impressive, not just because they're sexy girls, but because they are very high quality graphics.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
I think one of the elements that hurt Rumble Roses in the West is that a lot of what's viewed as erotic in Japan, in particular like when girls are being humiliated or embarrassed somehow, it feels wrong, awkward, or even cringe to us. So I don't remember a lot of controversy surrounding this game at the time of its release, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people saw this game and thought it was sexist, you know? I mean, objectification of women is the obvious foundation of the gameplay experience here. So I was surprised to learn that the director of this game was actually a woman, Hiromi Furuta, who is still with Yuke's today and has directed many of their WWE games. I wasn't able to find any kind of interviews or information on Furuta's feelings toward this particular project. So if we overlook the game's obvious marketing strength and focus on the gameplay itself, what we're left with is a pretty solid wrestling-fighting hybrid. The wrestling is actually quite simple when compared to other wrestling games. It's nowhere near as deep as the WWE games that were out at the time, but that's kind of part of what's fun about it. And we can break down the gameplay. Some of this is gonna sound a little familiar to you if you've played like SmackDown Here Comes the Pain or other wrestling games that were around at the time. Rumble Roses has simpler gameplay than a lot of other wrestling games, but they still manage to fit in all kinds of moves, from traditional holds, slams, and submissions to springboards, superplexes, and even dives. While each character has a unique arsenal, the controls are remarkably consistent. The square button allows you to strike the opponent, and multiple presses will unleash a combo. You can combine a direction on the analog stick with square in order to use different strikes. By pressing cross, you can begin running, and you can use square and the D-pad to unleash a different number of running strikes. Pressing triangle while dashing will let you vault over the opponent to attack from behind, and if you Irish whip the opponent with your back to the ropes, you'll send them tumbling to the outside of the ring. All pretty typical wrestling game fare up to this point, I think. This is where it gets really intuitive and cool and becomes a lot like Here Comes the Pain. If you press the triangle button while neutral, you'll just Irish whip the opponent, either to the ropes or to the corner depending on which direction you're facing. And when the opponent bounces off the ropes, they'll be vulnerable to a variety of strikes and grappling techniques. An opponent stuck in the corner can be attacked using the ropes. You can do all kinds of cool rope-related moves over there. Some characters will do springboards or superplexes depending what direction is combined with the triangle button. The grapple system here is simple but elegant. You can grab your opponent in 4 ways. Pressing right or left with the triangle will initiate a head grab, and then you can strike or you can press the direction and triangle for a number of different grapples. The set of moves that can be performed depends on whether you press left or right with the initial grab, meaning the neutral grab can lead into 8 unique moves. If you press down in triangle, you'll do a dragon screw, and then you can attack the opponent's legs with a variety of strikes and submissions. If you press up in triangle, you'll perform a takeover by the head, which will allow you to attack the opponent's head in a similar manner. Some moves will cause the opponent to become temporarily dazed. Dazed opponents are subject to a number of different grapple attacks without having to initiate a grab first. Standing behind a dazed opponent opens up yet another set of attacks. Each character has a truly wide arsenal. The game would be complete without the ability to dive off the top rope. In Rumble Roses, you can climb to the top rope and execute several moves either to the inside or outside of the ring. You can even dive over the ropes to the outside or get a running start and set up a tope suicida. Of course, wrestling wouldn't be wrestling if you couldn't hit your opponent when they're down. A number of down attacks are available, including standing moonsaults, running elbow drops, and so much more. You can grab the opponent's head or legs to open up the opportunity to use any of the up or down triangle strikes and grapples. You can also tap triangle to pick up the opponent, leaving them stunned, or double tap triangle and pick them up with their back to you, also stunned, which is a great way to pile on the damage. Like many wrestling games, you can cause damage to various body parts. The part damaged by any given attack will be represented by an icon under your opponent's meter. While this has no immediate impact on the other wrestler's performance, damaging a specific body part repeatedly can lead to a danger status for that body part. A completely damaged body part will be especially vulnerable to submission holds. When you lock in a submission hold, a meter will appear next to a number. The meter is how long the hold will be applied, and the number represents how many button presses are required to escape. If you're caught in a hold, you have to mash the buttons as quickly as possible to bring that number to 0 before the meter runs out. The more damaged a body part becomes, the shorter the meter is, and the more powerful the submission hold, the more button presses are required. Defense is every bit as important as offense, and the R1 button can be used to block incoming attacks. If you hold R1 and time a press of the square or triangle button, you can reverse a strike or grapple respectively. A successful reversal is confirmed with a flash of light. This will leave the opponent dazed for just a moment, allowing for a counterattack, but it usually creates a buffer of distance between the wrestlers, so you don't always get to take advantage of it. In order to avoid having your moves reversed, mix up strikes and grapples and change up your rhythm. This system makes Rumble Roses feel much more like a fighting game and adds a level to the gameplay that makes it much more fun. There's no limit to the number of reversals that can be performed, and sometimes the AI will randomly become a technical genius and just reverse everything, so watch out for that. Even special moves can be reversed, but it's really hard to get the timing right. Making Rumble Roses feel even more like a fighting game, each player has a meter that builds up as they land attacks or use one of 4 taunts by pressing the assigned direction on the right analog stick. A full meter allows you to use one of 2 finishing moves, a lethal move, which can be done at any time and will end most matches, and a killer move, which requires the wrestler to be in the correct position and does more damage. There's also a third special move that can be used, but it requires building not just your own meter, but also your opponent's humiliation meter. The humiliation meter is shaped like a heart, and it gets filled up when certain moves are used. Moves that increase this meter usually involve showing the opponent's crotch to the audience, obviously. You can also fill up your own with some moves as well. When it fills up, the screen will turn pink and the victim will writhe on the ground for a moment. If the humiliation meter and your own meter are both full, you can unleash a powerful humiliation move, a submission hold that is very difficult to escape, and can result in a knockout. Each character has unique finishing moves. You may have noticed that Rumble Roses has no life bars. So how do you know when your opponent is ready to be pinned? An opponent with nothing left in the tank will walk around the ring clutching her abdomen and leaning over, showing that she's exhausted and in pain. Now is the time to end the match. You can pin a downed opponent with the circle button. Additionally, Many opponents will be unable to kick out of a lethal, killer, or humiliation move, even if they aren't hurt. If you're pinned, you can try mashing buttons to escape, but there's no guarantee you'll be able to kick out. If you have your opponent in a pin or submission hold but you want to continue the match, you can press the circle button and it'll release the hold. One common complaint among reviewers, most of whom praised the graphics and gave the gameplay a big old meh out of 5, was that the game music and sound are not very good. This is due in no small part to the English voice actors just being cringe-inducingly awful. To the credit of the actors though, look at what they had to work with. As far as the music, I think it's actually pretty good, so I don't know, I can't complain about that. The soundtrack's playing behind me right now and I'm sure you've been kind of bopping your head digging it, so... Despite Rumble Roses getting a somewhat mid-reception, it did well enough to be released in Japan and Europe after the initial North America release. Yeah, that's right, this game about wrestling waifus came out in the US first. That's still weird to me. Maybe that was incorrect, that's what I read, I don't know. There was even a sequel on the Xbox 360, and that was called Rumble Roses XX, which is short for Rumble Roses Double X Rated. This title unfortunately drove the game even further into the territory of being off-putting to Western audiences with these Queens matches, where the loser would have to perform a humiliating task like sweep the deck in a bikini while everyone watches. It's weird. It's weird. I don't know. Now that we've discussed it, now that the dust has settled, I hope you can appreciate Rumble Roses as a guilty pleasure that was more than just gratuitous fan service. A wrestling game that was an alternative to the WWE games of the time, but with a story and setting much more at home in Japanese anime than in a wrestling promotion. Chances are, if you like Japan's DDT wrestling promotion, or you're a fan of the Golden Lovers or Ladybeard, you'll probably like Rumble Roses. Just don't tell anyone that I told you about it. Thank you so much for watching Risky Fitness and sticking through to the end of this longer than usual video. I hope you enjoyed, and look, this is some pretty racy content. I doubt I'm going to be able to monetize this one, so please do me a favor, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on notifications, check out some of my other videos, and please consider joining my Patreon. There's a link in the description below. Thank you, and until next time, game over.